Ralph Russo, now with The Athletic, formerly the Associated Press, longtime college football writer, friend of the program, friend of the various shows that we've had, and really does an incredible job of just sort of delivering what's going on in the world of college football. And so we got to find out today where Ralph is and what he thinks of where we sit in this college football landscape. Ralph, good morning. How are you?
It's a pleasure to talk with you again. It's been a little bit, and I'm glad to see you guys are up and running again with a new show. And again, pleasure to be on it.
Hey, thanks for making time for us. So you've been kind of taking it all in, Big 12, SEC, Big 10, all these ACC media days. What if there's one or 2 points that you've just kind of extracted from all this? What have you found to be most interesting?
Well, it's hard not to be drawn into the playoff conversation as each commissioner gets the chance to take the podium for the first time in a little bit, right? It's everybody. The last time I saw these guys was in Asheville, North Carolina, at a meeting in a swanky hotel, and they were trying to get some stuff done on, a new format. They were talking about ways to tweak the selection process. That's been a big part of the conversation, and I kind of knew things would go dark for the summer a little bit as people kind of got away. And I was interested to hear, okay, well, we're going to restart these conversations now, and everybody's going to get the chance to have a public comment about it at their own media days. And I think the most interesting thing is, it doesn't sound like anybody's really moved off their position. And it doesn't, and I think that there's a very real chance that no expansion could happen, which maybe is a good thing, frankly. But again, the fact that it doesn't seem like anybody's really moved off their positions, and that we are again sort of stuck in a playoff quagmire is a little bit of it's a little exasperating as someone who's covered this stuff for a few years, and to think that we had a pretty good event last year. I thought you guys did okay with this. I thought the new 12-teamer was pretty good, and all you've done is complain about it, and why would you go about complaining about your big event and your new product, your shiny new toy? So that's one of the things that's really stood out to me, because it's been a through line through all the media days.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I've just thought the last few days everybody's grandstanding, and it's one of those situations, and you just said it, that this may be a good thing if it doesn't expand beyond 12 teams.
Yeah, I think so, because I don't think anybody was asking for expansion. This was all internal. Again, I also keep going back to, and something that was really highlighted for me yesterday for whatever reason. It's just if I have, this is their product, right? The college football playoff is their crown jewel event, and they expanded it and debuted this 12-team event. And I know it wasn't perfect, and the seeding thing created some weird matchups, and there were some lopsided games. But hey, football always provides lopsided postseason games. It's just kind of the way it is, right? But to then spend all this time telling the world how it stinks, right? We don't like this about it. This isn't good. This isn't great. We don't like the selection committee. I feel like you're just undermining your. I wouldn't open a business and then have it be fairly successful in the first few months, and then say, you know what, we need to improve it, and then not only do we need to improve it, but we really don't even like what our product, Yeah. I just feel like they've undermined. So now if it doesn't expand, I feel like they've almost undermined what they do have, which I thought was pretty good. How do you build confidence and likability in your product if you are the one bashing it?
Well, Ralph, let's think about this. They don't have a business. Nobody's in charge of a business. They have a conference. And these guys are all grandstanding on behalf of their conference to get more teams in. And I'm like, who are you talking to? Who are you trying to convince? Who's in charge? This isn't a voting public that you're trying to convince to get on your side. And nobody's talking about the holistic part of college football. They're just all talking about their conference. And I mean, what is the Big Ten doing having a media days in Vegas for what? Like you've eliminated people that want to cover your sport that live down the street or a couple hours away. They can't get out there. 3-hour time difference. It's just, I mean, what are we doing?
It does speak to the bigger problem that's been a bigger problem in college sports for a long time. As you said, nobody's in charge. Everybody very much acts locally because that's their job. That's the other frustrating part about it too. And I can't remember who I was talking to that sort of brought this up, but it was a good point. It's like we can be critical of the way they act to protect their self-interest, but protecting their self-interest is their job. Like protecting the interest of their conference. So again, it's frustrating that they act that way, but that is the job description.
Yeah, it's the way it's set up.
And I hearken back to SEC spring meetings when I asked the question of Greg Sankey that kind of set him off about the good of the game and how do you balance the good of the SEC with the good of the broader, product. And I think, frankly, like Greg's been asked that a lot because he's the guy who has been around this the longest. And I think he does have an appreciation for the bigger picture of college sports. So I think that he doesn't like to necessarily be questioned about his motives that way. But again, you're right. It's sort of it's the core problem with all of college sports. And again, when I bring it back to the playoff, as you said, the other thing that sort of amazes me is like, wait a second, Big Ten, you got 4 teams in last year, right? Like how many more do you need? And even the SEC, I go back to them, they only got 3, and it turned out to be, they treat it like a disaster because the worst Alabama team in the last 20 years didn't make the playoff. Like, guys, it's okay. Everything, like last year turned out pretty good. It's never going to be perfect. So the idea that everybody's rushing to just say like, this is wrong, we got to change this, and we didn't like the way this worked out. Like, again, how do you sell your product that way? As people who are, as again, owners of a business, but you're right, like that's not their business is not running the playoff. Their business is making sure their business is taken care of in the playoff. That's their business, right? Their business is making sure the interest of their conference is taken care of within the playoff. And as you said, it's not the way it should be. It's not the way it should be. It's got to be a better way.
So let's get into football season. Ralph Russo,
sure.
Covering college football from The Athletic. And maybe a little broader question here, but I'm coming at it from an Arkansas perspective, and this is what we end up talking about a lot of the time, and that is how an Arkansas team competes in this environment. I see, Texas Tech and all the NIL money. I saw a story today that Missouri has some new state legislation that allows more money and that they're going to have, $31 million or whatever. We in college football know that the traditional powers win. I mean, the teams with the best recruiting bases win more than anybody else. How does a team like Arkansas, in your opinion, compete in this environment? And by the way, if they did expand the playoff, I think it opens up, obviously it expands it and opens opportunities for more Arkansas-like teams, perhaps to make the playoff. But how do they compete in this environment, in your opinion?
So that brings a couple of things to mind. And one is, I'm sorry, it's a little bit of a tangent, but if you give me a little breath here, I think it might be relevant. And it's this idea that we have gotten very obsessed with like money and competitive balance in the NIL era with the money going to the players. And I just get a little frustrated. Money has always been a factor and a major factor, like the amount of resources schools have, and the fact that it is not equal, and that it is not, we do not live in a salary capped professional sports, ecosystem in college sports where we have competitive balance and they moderate the money. So I get a little, and I'm not pointing to you. I'm talking about people in college sports. I get a little frustrated when we talk about, boy, all this money is creating all this competitive balance. What will we do for the schools that can't spend enough? Nobody seemed to worry about that when all the money was going to the coaches and the administrators and the facilities. Now we worry about competitive balance and money when it's going to the players. So that little part of it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, money has always decided who's good and who's not in college sports. So as far as Arkansas, listen, Arkansas, they're not poor, right? There's money, there's SEC money there. So I do understand, and I do believe, now, again, I say what I say, and I think that there is an idea that this revenue sharing is going to create a little bit more balance, but we've already seen through some of the rulings and some of the way we think collectives, and that's not completely set in stone yet, might be dealt with, that we might moderate some of the money to a certain degree. I think the market might moderate some of the money to a certain degree, but I think I don't know if this is in the bigger picture that much different than what we've had. So when you say, can Arkansas compete in this environment, I would look to the last 15 to 20 years and say, hey, the environment's not that much different. We're just spending the money on different places. So I don't know if that might not be uplifting to Arkansas fans, but I'm not sure how much the pecking order is going to be changed now that we're spending the money on the players and not just coaches, facilities, and everything else they figured ways to spend money on as the coffers were getting, more and more full over the last, few decades.
When we look at the league this year, Alabama, you mentioned the worst year they've had in like 20 years, and I think they win 9 games.
But not that bad.
Yeah, but is there somebody in the league this year that you think is going to surprise the SEC?
So, listen, it's hard to be, as you said, it's hard to be a surprise in the SEC. They are pretty top heavy. So then you start looking at what are those second, third tier teams, the teams that you think of in the middle of the pack. Does Auburn? That would be a surprise, right? I think if Auburn contended, really made a serious contention for the SEC championship and a playoff spot, coming off of 2 losing seasons, that's a lot to put on Jackson Arnold. So again, I'm not 100. I'm if you're looking for just some candidates, I would circle Auburn. But even if you look at Florida and Oklahoma, Florida is probably going to be a top 15 to 20 team when we start the season. So I'm not sure how surprising, considering the way they ended the season, how surprising they would be if they were up, fighting for the SEC championship. As bad as Oklahoma was last year, especially offensively because of all the injuries, I think a lot of people have fairly high expectations for a bounce back in Norman, by the way, probably needed by Brent Venables. There's a lot of money there, questions there, too, about whether they could afford to fire him, even if he has a little bit of a rough year. But the defense is pretty good, and they basically imported Washington State's offense with its coordinator and its quarterback, and that should be a pretty big improvement. So I kind of circle that bunch as I don't think we are going into the season thinking any of those teams would win the SEC. But I also wouldn't be shocked if one of that grouping, is really deeper into the mix than we are expecting now.
Ralph, let me ask you about Texas before you get out of here. Are they the new Alabama? And it just seems to me like Texas's inclusion in the SEC has made a great conference even greater. And, I mean, that's one of those teams that you talk about resources. I mean, they got everything.
Yeah, and they are very well equipped in this new era, right? They've always had a lot of resources. Commandeering those resources to pay players in various ways, even as we transition to a system that might present a little more obstacles to how you get them paid than maybe the last couple of years, right? We need to maybe be a little more above board on how you get them paid as opposed to just, here's $500,000, sign this football. So, yeah, I think the structure of college football right now certainly favors Texas being very good. I think I think the fact that they finally sort of got their own house in order, alignment, coach, AD, people around the program, they all seem to be pulling the rope in the same direction. And you got a pretty good coach who sort of brought the Alabama way, Sark, after his time at Alabama, to Texas. So I think those two things make Texas, just as you said, Texas could be here for a while. They look like, I was down in Austin in the spring, and it looks like a program that's ready to make not just a run this year, but to stay there for an extended period of time. I think they're going to be preseason number one, and they look really, really loaded.
Yeah, Sark's a great fit, it seems like they've struggled with the great fit for a head coach for a while, and I think they nailed it with him. Ralph, great to have you on, always.
Thank you, Ralph.
Thanks a lot. We'll do it again.
Thanks again. Thanks a lot, guys. And again, anytime, just feel free to give a buzz.
We'll do it, man. Thank you. We look forward to getting into the season. All this talk about everything but what really is going to transpire in the field. I just think this is going to be a really good college football year.